Once again, and welcome if you're just joining us to the Richard E. Morning Show. It's now time for The Big Story. And the U.S. State Department has resumed processing student visa applications after a temporary suspension in May. However, applicants are now required to make their social media accounts public for government review. Consular officers will monitor posts and messages for content deemed hostile to the United States, its government, culture, or institutions. And, by extension, refusal to comply may result in visa rejection. Now, this is a major development and a developing story, and there's no better person to help me dissect it than Educator Dr. Karren Dunkley, based in the United States of America. Good morning, Dr. Dunkley. How are you today?
Grand rising to you and your listeners, Richie B. Thank you as always. It's always a pleasure to be here.
All right. Thank you so much, Doc. Now, I want to ask you, first of all, what do you see as the implications of monitoring students' social media accounts for visa applications? And how might this impact academic freedom?
Excellent question, especially around the academic freedom piece. So let's, first of all, just share with the listeners exactly what it is that America purports that it's doing in terms of the monitoring. If you or those who have followed in recent days, the feedback in terms of the different sanctions against universities, it's critical. So we know, as you stated, that they're looking at public profiles for what the administration deemed is hostility toward U.S. institutions, not just government, but any institution of the United States, right? So it could be, for example, it might be their immigration policy. It could be their foreign aid policy. As you know, this is emanating out of the conversation between Israel and Hamas. They're looking for support, what they deem to be support for terrorism, anti-Semitism, or anything that is, quite frankly, what they describe as being politically sensitive. And they're looking, quite frankly, to squeeze out Ivy League, because you mentioned academic freedom. So if you really look at what the policy entails, it's saying that they're going to give preference to students from universities with less than 15% international enrollment. And that is intentional to somehow decrease the number of international students who attend Ivy Leagues, because they believe that Ivy Leagues have been the most vocal or tend to be the most vocal around policies that the administration would prefer that there's no social commentary on. So when you speak about how it impacts academic freedom, absolutely. International students, there are three ways, will avoid engaging in sensitive subject matters, discussions. Social movements typically emanate out of universities. You may remember tertiary education, what happened in Tiananmen Square in China. You may recall that when Martin Luther King, Dr. King, wanted to fight segregation, that they were doing everything in the 60s. And finally, they said that the strategy was, let's go get the children, let's implement desegregation in public schools. So the academic arena has always been the place to foment and foster energy and ideas and to get radical change. So when you talk about the coursework, even the course syllabus, I have a lot of professor friends. As you know, I've taught at both St. John's University and Teachers College Columbia. So even when you look at course syllabi being vetted around controversial topics, when it comes to U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East and Black Lives Matters and LGBTQ rights, all of that. So that is the chilling effect on intellectual inquiry, constraints on faculty and the curriculum. And of course, you're going to have a talent loss. People just simply won't come, and your reputation is at stake, because now it appears to be complete propaganda. We've always had propaganda, Richie B, but it's complete propaganda now, where it's only if it's sanctioned by the state.
This
I know that was a lot.
It was a lot, but it's a lot of serious stuff and very important matters that you're sharing with us. So I suspect now that this is going to impact the way students prepare for and even navigate the visa application process. Do you suspect that some students might very well have to be contemplating closing out social media accounts now?
Absolutely. Let me say this. I speak about this from a personal space because I entered the United States as an international student.
Yes.
And so I really understand at that time, you're I-20, you have to demonstrate through bank accounts the ability to sustain yourself being in the United States without any kind of aid, your housing, your food, your general day-to-day. So the review, they would have to think about their digital footprint, right? And how they're showing up on their public, the Twitter, the Instagram, the TikTok, the YouTube from 5 to 10 years ago. We know when you're young, you're frivolous in your thoughts, you're unfiltered, you're flippant. And I think absolutely they would have to certainly think about political memes. I, for one, and I know several young persons, they just repost a meme. It doesn't even mean that you agree. It could be that you are enlightening or amplifying or magnifying something. Anything with sarcasm or post without clear content. They will have to delete or archive content that could be possibly misinterpreted. Any jokes or criticisms of U.S. policy, support for controversial causes against. And quite frankly, they have to set accounts to public and limit content to academic, personal, and cultural interests. So absolutely, the digital footprint, being thoughtful about that for the past 5 to 10 years is going to become paramount. And the application documentation, the I-20 or the DS 2019, the financial documents, the scholarship letters if they have those, and the ties to the home country, I think even become more critical. And to prepare for the visa interview, we see, Richie, where around marriage, they're saying now that even when you go with the pictures for the marriage, you cannot just have the pictures of yourself and your spouse. They want weddings. They want to see people involved. One lawyer said he went in and the immigration officer was basically silent, barely spoke to them. They had a lot of clicking and talking, and they just looked at the screen. They separated the spouses, drew a diagram of the bedroom and said, show me where your bed is, show me where your this is, and they did it to them to see if it would match. So I'm saying that when it comes now for the visa interview, you have to know about your university program, your plans after graduation, how you're going to fund your studies, and you can't have any political answers. You can't be expressing how you feel on certain topics. So they just have to be aware. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Richie B, you're not legally required to share your passwords. If I'm coming through any process, I don't have to share my password. But understand that if you do not share your password, you may be denied a visa if you refuse to set the accounts to public.
All right.
And that is going to be the cost. There's a cost to it.
Yes. So in all of this, is the U.S. government in any way giving any assurance that, that they will, sort of ensure the protection of students' personal data and online activity? Any assurance is being given in all of this?
I think that the United States government is going to give the assurance that they are going to vet the students. They have not explicitly clarified how data will be stored, used, or protected after screening, right? And again, what the State Department has said is they are assessing hostility towards the United States, support for terrorism, or anti-Semitism. No explicit about data use. We do know that the federal protections, there are a patchwork of laws, and this date is unique to me because, at this time I was preparing, coming into the world. You have a patchwork of laws that you call the Privacy Act of 1974, and that really speaks to how the U.S. regulate how agencies collect, store, and disclose personal information. But there's no central federal law that guarantees rigorous protection or limiting the use of social media in vetting visa decisions. So it's going to be interesting to see how different jurisdictions handle this matter, because when there's no central federal law, basically you are relying on different jurisdictions to determine implementation. So you will get variance. You absolutely will get variance.
So Dr. Dunkley, how does the U.S.'s approach now to student visa applications and social media monitoring compare to other countries?
That is, I think, quite interesting, right? So here's what we do know. We have not, in our scope of search, in our research, see how it compares to other countries, where countries, for example, in Europe or Africa, or quite frankly, the Caribbean, where they have something that is similar. So we know the United States, it appears, has the most stringent and politicized policy. The mandatory disclosure of social media accounts is reinstated, and the fact that students may be refused access, the fact that political speech can be deemed hostile to U.S. interests, the fact, for example, that, again, they're looking for anti-terrorism, the fact that data may be stored indefinitely and shared, by the way, Richie B., for your listeners across federal agencies such as ICE, the Department of Homeland Services, and the FBI. And there's no clear legal recourse. So we do not see this stringent and politicization as yet in Canada. Canada, they do not have mandatory social screening. The focus is on academic intent, funding, and admissibility. And Canada does not do a criminal background, right? We know that Canada also have what it calls an IRCC. And if I am incorrect, forgive me, but I think it's the Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada that adheres to strict privacy laws. And under this, I think it's called PIPEDA, Privacy Act, and Personal Information Protection in Electronic Documents, to ensure that people's data is stored. And then you have clear procedures for data use and storage. Now, let me tell you this. America doesn't want unchecked immigration. I've spoken to several lawyers, legal and academics, who said we need some kind of vetting. We certainly don't want people who are anti the United States. Why should they come here? If you're anti the United States, go somewhere else and study. If you're anti the government, go somewhere else and study. So we've heard that. We are just saying that we want a policy that is open, that is transparent, and that really speaks to the needs of everyone. And the United Kingdom, they have moderate scrutiny. Again, the focus in the United Kingdom is on financial and immigration risk, that you're not going to come and stay in their country without a legal pathway, that you have an intent to return, you have good ties to your home country, but they're not flagged about being based on speech or any particular ideology. So again, to your question, the United States appears to have the most stringent and the most politicized process for international students.
Yes. I really want to wish the students well as they try to navigate these new requirements and even the challenges that they pose. My final question to you, Dr. Dunkley, what do you see as the potential long-term consequences of this policy on the U.S.'s reputation as a destination for international students and scholars?
Well, what we do know, the world is both smaller and larger at the same time. It's something I've said. The world is now borderless. So, for example, Richie B, I'm speaking to you in real time in Jamaica. I can stay right here in the United States, in Africa, anywhere in the continent, Ghana, Nigeria, and I can take a class at the University of the West Indies, right?
Yes.
And so when it comes to virtual impact, one of the things that I'm curious is, in terms of innovation, how international universities, especially the Ivies, will now leverage virtual programs, if that makes sense, right? Especially post-pandemic. So I think, no doubt, long-term, you will have a decline in international student enrollment. I think even if individuals meet the criteria, they just simply won't come. They're going to perhaps perceive the environment as hostile, even though America is saying, no, hey, we're protecting our security, our global security interests, and that is our prerogative. We know that in 2023-24, let me just share some quick stats. International students contributed over $38 billion to the U.S. economy. I think we mentioned this in a previous interview.
Yes.
Even a 10% drop could lead to billions in losses and weaken graduate programs. So we know, for example, because you're contributing to housing, they're citizens, right? Taxes and all of that.
Yeah.
So definitely decline. When you think of STEM programs, PhD pipelines and research universities, they depend heavily on international talent. And I think obviously they're going to be impacted. We know, by the way, that you have enrollment drops already observed in favor of Canada, the UK, Australia, interestingly enough, and European Union countries that are more student-friendly. So we have seen a reduction in students avoiding U.S. institutions. Again, the surveillance, the censorship, and the visa denials. The other thing is the brain drain from the U.S. to other nations. So highly skilled students, we've mentioned STEM, but let's talk about AI, engineering, medicine, entrepreneurship. They will redirect to countries with stronger privacy protections and inclusive immigration policies. Look at the wealthiest man. He's an immigrant.
Yes.
Think about that. Who's come to the United States, right? So would he be allowed, especially as radical as he is in his thinking? And then, quite frankly, you're going to have the third impact, I would imagine, Richie B., would be the erosion of U.S. higher ed global leadership. The United States has been the top destination for global academic talent. And certainly this policy positions education as a security risk and not a public good. So now we're having conversation about education as a security risk versus something that is public spaces of inquiry that really benefits the entire society. So I think those will be the top three long-term impact. Okay. One last thing, if you have a quick second.
Yes, go ahead.
In the United States, during the Cold War era, you had the McCarthyism. But they would say, you are a communist, you're a communist, and you had the Red Scare, right? And so you had all of these individuals who were impugned wrongly so, and, you know, their lives were upended. So if these policies are not implemented in a way that allows oxygen to permeate the system, what you will find is that this political vetting could lead to a kind of Cold War era McCarthyism, where if unchecked, it's going to set a precedent for filtering visa applicants rather than on academic merit. And I think that we as a country, that's not our intent, because we want an education system that breathes life, while of course we're protecting American global interests, but we want it where innovation, entrepreneurship, and academic freedom persist.
Oh boy, thank you so very much. Wonderful talking with you as usual. You've given us a lot of information that we really appreciate, Dr.